supply chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, as well as the Blended podcast, and founder of the Blended Pledge as well. I'm so glad to be back in my home studio with you guys for this conversation. Audrey Ross is going to be joining me today. Last week, I was in Atlanta for the Woman in Supply Chain event, and my first keynote, which was really exciting. I think I've found my groove and my flow, and I can't wait to do that a little bit more often in the industry. But I'm really glad to be back, although it is snowing here in Toronto this morning, which I am not very happy about, but you know, it is winter, and hopefully one of these days I can spend winter somewhere warm. All right, let's get to what is happening on Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a couple of brand new episodes for you. So yesterday, episode 304 came out, and it's my conversation from home delivery world with Flex. And Flex is doing some amazing things in the warehousing space. They're able to flex with your business, and we talk about how that works and what that looks like with the intersection of logistics and technology. So definitely go and check that out wherever you subscribe to the show. It is there for you. It's also on the Let's Talk Supply Chain YouTube page and over at letstalksupplychain.com as well. Plus, we are right in the middle of a new mini series. So we've got a podcast mini series with Sifted, and this time we're talking about driving your parcel performance. And this particular episode, which is 303 with Caleb Nelson, we're talking about better performance. Now, you want to go and check out this mini series. Why? Well, UPS and FedEx have come out with some significant increases to your parcel pricing, and you might not need to pay those additional fees. But you have to listen to this mini series to find out how you won't have to pay those fees. So go and check that out. We've got the mini series over on letstalksupplychain.com. We've also got it on our YouTube page and wherever you subscribe to the show as well. So last week, I was in Atlanta for the Woman in Supply Chain event, and I wore my Woman in Supply Chain shirt. You can see that I've got my I like to move it sweatshirt, which for Davin specifically, I made a red one. So you guys need to go and check it out over at Let's Talk Supply Chain under shop. But what I can tell you is I wore a Diversity Matters in Supply Chain shirt. I wore this shirt for my keynote in Atlanta, and everybody loved it. So I wanted just to showcase to you what we've got on our shop, because I know that holidays are coming up, and for your favorite supply chainer, you might want to go and get some of the merch on our website. So that's at letstalksupplychain.com. And then I also want to tell you that it was my birthday on Sunday, and I want to give a shout out to my team, Jonathan Kempe over at Let's Talk Supply Chain Asia Pack, AJ, Alini, so many amazing people on my team gave us a shout out, or gave me a shout out for my birthday over on LinkedIn. And I want to give a shout out to them because I wouldn't be able to do this without them. And I really appreciate them. So thank you guys for doing that. Plus, last but not least, before we bring Audrey up, we have got some live shows coming up. So right after this at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, do not go anywhere, because Judd from Far Eye is coming at you with an episode about reducing WSMO and delivering a superior customer experience, which you're not going to want to miss. He's already got 81 people attending that particular show. So go and check that out. And then on Friday, Eric Johnson is back with LogTech Live, dissecting the global logistics technology ecosystem, which I'm super excited about as well. So go and click the attend button on that. The other things that I want to let you know just really, really quickly, So we're doing a DEI honors. So if you know an organization in supply chain that is very committed to diversity and inclusion, we want you to nominate them. So AJ is going to put the link in the comments so you can go and nominate them, because we are giving away, I think, 4 awards at TPM in March. And last but not least, I'm going to be going live on Instagram a little bit more often. So if you're not following Let's Talk Supply Chain on LinkedIn or on Instagram, go and follow us. It's at Let's Talk Supply Chain, because I want to see you. I want to see your comments, and we're just going to have some fun times and some conversations. So definitely want to see you over there. Now, without further ado, because I have spoken way too much already, it is time to bring up Miss Audrey Ross. You're on mute. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's so great to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
Yeah, it's probably been 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. So,
Mhm.
for everybody who doesn't know who you are, which I don't even think there's anybody left on this planet that doesn't know who you are, can you tell everybody who you are?
Sure. I'm Audrey Ross. I'm based here in snowy Toronto
Yeah.
today, and the import and export compliance manager in house at Orchard Custom Beauty. That's my current role right now. What else? I'm on the OIT Organization for Women in International Trade Board.
Yeah.
We're on the JOC Diversity Committee together. We've got Blended Pledge going on. So I keep busy. So.
We have got so much going on. Hey, Davin. We've also got somebody on YouTube who's saying they're in North York and there's nothing there yet. Well, it is coming, because Audrey's in
South
Etobicoke
Etobicoke, yeah.
and I'm in Mississauga, and
The
it's
west.
definitely
It's
coming
coming
for
from
you.
the west to North York.
So it's coming for you. I mean, it is that time of year. Usually it snows on my birthday. It did not snow on my birthday Sunday, but it was very, very, very cold.
We've had a
Very
very
cold.
long fall. I have to say it's been very enjoyable for us here because
It's been
we
nice,
had
right?
great color. We had beautiful fall color for like weeks and weeks, which we don't. Sometimes it's a little bit shorter. So yeah.
They also want a mug. So let me tell you the secret to getting a mug. You can either go onto the shop at Let's Talk Supply Chain, or you can be the person who interacts with us the most on our Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn page and become the follower of the month. Anyways, just some secrets. All right, let's get to our poll of the week. So, what did we ask everybody? What is the most important factor to consider when choosing a carrier? So 83% said reliability, 12% said sustainability, 3% said storage capacity, and 2% said other, which I'll get to the comments in just a minute. But what do you think about seeing this, Audrey? What do you look for?
Reliability.
So you're with the 83%.
I'm not surprised by that answer. Yeah, for sure. Although sustainability is becoming a key piece because we've started to see sustainability. Hey, it's Peter.
I know.
Um,
Hi, Peter.
we've started to see an increase in sustainability in the product you might be working on. Especially in my sphere, we've seen the product going through sort of a transition to circular.
Mhm.
But we haven't talked about transportation, and so that's sort of the next thing. So okay, if we've redone our manufacturing, reassessed our supply chain to make it more circular, what's the next piece in that outside of the product and the warehouse and the inventory and the building? The next piece of that would be the transportation and logistics. So that's coming for sure.
So some of the comments, Tristan says relationships. So having a healthy and engaged relationship is
Yeah, but if they're
key.
not performing,
I
if you
know if they're not
have
performing that.
liability, the relationship gets strained pretty fast. Personal experience.
Um, Sukarni says safety management and cost competitiveness. That's
Mhm.
actually one of the things that we didn't really include was cost.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
I'm
'cause
glad that
cost has
he
been so, you know, but safety
anyways,
too. Yeah, yeah. Safety has
so
been
I
really key.
Yeah, so I think we wanted to stay away from cost and really find out what some of the other key drivers are. And obviously, reliability in this kind of market is huge when it comes to transportation. Now, I wanted to ask you, can you give everybody a bit of a market update and what you're seeing on the logistics and transportation side, where you're at right now?
What coming in and out? Sure. Europe is pretty clear, moving things, fairly well. getting into closer to the end of the year season. So then you're going to see a lot of holidays crop up or a lot of closures. So we're trying to just work around some presetting some truck pickups and sort of inland moves for us. We have a lockdown in an area in China right now, so that's
we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about
stalling some of our production for a key product that we were really supposed to move out a little bit earlier. So we're having a look at air shipping, which is not fun, but we're still working through that project. So that still is a situation that sort of crops up. Haven't seen a lot on, and I'd sort of expected to start seeing it a lot on any brownouts or electricity shortages, because both the European market, Middle East, and through Asia, we're sort of expecting to have some service interruptions around electricity and power. Haven't seen that yet specifically, which is good. I'm not wishing that it happens. I'm hoping that it doesn't. And then in the North American market, you got LA. Everyone was celebrating, I guess, about 2 weeks ago that they're down to like 4 vessels, normal vessels in the port, not the hundreds that we saw when we were at TPM earlier this year. Literally from the hotel, you could see all of those vessels.
So exciting.
It was such a little like Instagram's normally like, oh, go to this restaurant or go to this. It's like take a photo with the vessel container that's sitting outside of the port here. And then New York and New Jersey's been nice and steady. Some of the rest of the American ports nice and steady. But Vancouver's still a hot mess. Based on it's still bad. Bad.
Avoid Vancouver. Everybody avoid Vancouver right now.
No, it's because of what's happening in Toronto, Montreal, though. Because everything got pushed out into Toronto, Montreal, and then it's not clearing the yards. So if you have inventory, go and pick it up so I can get my stuff, because I actually need my stuff. It's not a parking lot. It's not a little storage. Like, it's not 1-800 call storage at the rail terminal. Okay, go get your stuff.
Please go pick up your stuff.
Please go pick up your stuff so I can get mine. What's more important? My stuff.
I love it. I want to give a shout out to a couple people over on my personal LinkedIn. We've got Dee from Atlanta. We've got Hugh that says 100% reliability from our poll. We've got Fred and we've got Elliot. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us. Now, I found this thing actually on Instagram that I wanted to share with you guys, and I think that it's really important. So Michael Bublé, I don't know if you've seen this, but he had to cancel his concert in Australia. Yeah. And he was saying that it was because of supply chain issues. So these are just some of the comments that he got back in that post about postponing it. So this person said, if you Google concert logistics, it's been way more bands and musicians. I didn't know till I looked it up. Apparently it can be lots of stuff like shipping the equipment, customs, COVID outbreaks, visa issues, costs. Who knows? I'm just glad there's some new dates at least. And then this other person said they have built custom stages and lighting that needs to be shipped and transported. So many of those huge cargo ships have been rented and detained by the Chinese government. Who knows what sneaky, sinister plot the Chinese are planning, but they are screwing up lots of things.
Hashtag fact check.
Hashtag supply chain issues. I just wanted to share that because I thought, as supply chain professionals dealing with this every day and how we talk about things, what the general public actually is being fed as far as news and what they think is actually supply chain issues and what isn't. Like, it just made me laugh so bad. What did you think?
Yeah, that's it's always interesting when people are like, oh yeah, they might have to move things. I'm surprised they brought up the visa issue. That's a good one, because that happens quite a lot.
I know.
When you're moving people.
I thought I totally had to share that one.
But I like when people attribute when they don't know, they don't work in it, and what they attribute the issue to.
Exactly. Like what supply chain or how it's actually viewed by the general public still. So we've got some work to do, people.
But even we speculate. Like, I'm speculating on what the issues are in certain shit because you don't really have the information, or so yeah. But it's interesting to see where speculation veers into conspiracies.
Conspiracy and supply chain.
Yeah. Like, you wouldn't notice a 20,000 TEU vessel just being diverted for something else.
Yeah, that's a little bit difficult, especially when all the paperwork is done
Yeah.
and you can't get around that damn paperwork. I mean, everybody knows that, right?
Mm-mm.
Once it's on that paperwork, it is set in stone and you are going to that destination. But what it also says is that we have some work to do in educating the public a little bit more about what we do and how it all works. But, anyways, we will get there. All right, let's talk about our first article. So this one
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about because a lot of people are talking about how they're going to manage their supply chains in 2023.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What changes are we going to make, etc.? And now our third article for today actually has some really, really interesting stats. It's another CNBC article, which we're going to get to, but it talks about some of the percentages of how people are thinking about supply chain specifically in 2023. But first, I want to talk about the manufacturing and the export side of things. Now, this particular article is talking about how zero COVID is affecting manufacturing. Now, you just spoke about that, right? Because you said that you had a shutdown, but
Yeah.
ports are actually being shut down because of the zero COVID. So one person gets COVID on a Thursday, the whole port, I think, is shut down by the end of that day
Area.
or the beginning of next day. And what they're saying is accessories, footwear, furniture, travel goods, minerals, office tech, those are all being moved out of China for manufacturing. And it looks like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Malaysia are really hot on their heels as to the new manufacturing hubs. And even MSC is building a terminal in Ho Chi Minh
Nice.
because all the TEUs are dropping from China. So, what did you think about this? I'm going to scroll through this so you can see some of the graphs. But what did you think of this particular article?
I think it really, it's funny because like 5 years ago when the tariffs were starting and everybody was like, that's it, we're moving out of China. And then, during the pandemic, that's it, we're moving our manufacturing. We're going to do more domestic manufacturing. And it's a process to move manufacturing. It really doesn't happen overnight. But I think we're seeing the realization of some businesses 5 years ago making those decisions to start at least expanding and
Yeah.
not housing everything in one place. I think the sort of security and geopolitical concerns are sort of increasing, and for business who's just faced 3 years of significant supply chain risk, I think this is not a surprise to start to see this. And these are also countries like Vietnam has done a lot of work on. They're a member of the CTTPP
Mhm.
agreement. So you have countries who Malaysia, Bangladesh, Vietnam. You have countries who have been putting in more infrastructure work on their exports or on
Mhm.
being able to do this, so it makes them more attractive. And they might not have been doing that maybe on the same scale 8 or 10 years ago. So it's definitely, the shift is there. The COVID zero policy is really hard for I think especially North Americans to understand. Because we've sort of made maybe a whatever decision we've sort of come to is that we're sort of past it. And so any sort of precautionary measures around it seem to be very difficult. So trying to understand that cultural context has been really hard. I know, we're trying to, so you have people who are like, well, the factory should pay for air shipping, for a project that's stuck. And you're like, but it's not, they're not closed because they want to be or because of anything they've done. It's a state sanctioned closure. So then, for companies here, what recourse do you have?
Yeah.
That's the situation. And how long, since we've been in a supply chain issue for this long, how long are they going to keep going with that in the face of
Mhm.
every other country sort of shifted
Well,
their
well,
process?
and yeah, it really brings to light how important free trade agreements are and really taking a look at the political situation within a country when you're looking at potentially sourcing raw materials or sourcing
Yes.
finished goods, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. Now, it could always change, but at the end of the day, you need to have the right partners that's giving you the right information when you need it so you can make those decisions as well. And so
Yeah.
super, super important. And it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, Bayram
No.
says, do we pass to another factory of the world or localization of industries? Now, that is the question that's facing supply chain professionals really globally at the moment, when they're taking a look at their manufacturing, some can't get raw materials, some can't get finished goods from the suppliers that they previously had. And so that's really the shakeup in the industry at the moment, and probably one of the biggest conversation pieces that supply chain teams are having is, what do we do? And when we get to the third article, it says 51% of a survey think that supply chain challenges are going to remain in 2023. So those conversations are happening right now. They've been happening all year as to, how do we make 2023 not look like 2022 in light of some of these disruptions and these challenges that are going to remain. And so it's a big question. A lot of people, and I think it's going to come down to the organization.
Yes.
And the risk dollars that they want to spend, the money that they have to spend to, really source and take a look at what else is out there, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be, I think it's really going to be a holistic change for an organization, depending on how they feel about certain things. Whereas before, it was kind of like supply chain was kind of the same across the board. And I don't think we're going to see that anymore.
And our friend Gary Newberry will be very happy about that if people can
so.
become more intentional about their supply chain and actually have a designed supply chain, and not this like, yeah, that works. What are they doing? Yeah, let's do something like that. Like, you really do have to think about what you're doing, where you're doing it, why you're doing it in that particular region, and then do the sure shoring piece where you're actually going back and being able to, like, can I guarantee I don't have just one supplier of this very exclusive raw material, but I have at least two? So
yeah. So I'm actually going to talk about the third article. AJ, I'm going to mess you up. I'm going to talk about the third article next because we've been talking about it. But I do want to give a shout out over to Ebenezer and Sujay as well over on my personal LinkedIn. So this is the other article by CNBC, and there's a major shift. Oh no, is that the? Yeah, that's the right one. Yeah. Major shift underway in manufacturing for U.S. companies. Now, this article is based on a survey that SAP did. And it's really interesting. And I'm going to show you some of the graphs because it talks about how everybody is kind of thinking about supply chain. And so they're saying that 51%, like I said, think that supply chain is going to remain a challenge in 2023. They also said that 52% of organizations believe they need a major supply chain improvement. So that goes hand in hand. Okay, we're going to see some disruptions and challenges still in 2023. Okay, what do those major improvements look like for us? Yeah. And we need to do this right now. The other part of this survey was that 61% of them are going to move to wage and recruitment freezes to recover some of the money, which is what they're talking about. I mean, that's what everybody's talking about with inflation and moving into 2023. We've seen some job cuts across. But what I want to point out here is only 50% are saying staff job cuts. 61% are saying wage and recruitment freezes. So it means that people aren't going to lose their jobs, right? It's just that they might not be hiring.
I just think it's very interesting that in response to, if costs in the supply chain increase, what are you going to do? And it's cut your employees and cut their wages instead of renegotiating partner agreements, reassessing your supply chain design, relooking at your manufacturing sources, trying to sell more to different customers, pivot or have flexibility in your offerings. I think that's very telling. And I think as a person who works in this industry, I'm like, really?
Well, and I think
I think they do this. And like, how do people feel good about working in this industry? We already have a lot of high turnover. Mm-hmm. These jobs are not easy. And so I just think it's interesting that your first response to that question is like, I'm going to hassle my employees, as opposed to I'm going to collaborate with my employees to help them understand that we're in a period of, like, we have to do cost cutting. And instead of collaborating with them to make the situation better based on things that you can actually do no, I'm just going to hassle my employees. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and also, like I talk about this in the mini series with Sifted as well, is that these increases have come down from UPS and FedEx, but there's technologies that you can actually put into place, and you
Yeah,
don't have to pay these increases, like
exactly.
assisted technology. And so are we looking at
Exactly.
technology as
Oh,
a way to be able to negotiate our contracts and make sure that we're not getting overbilled for, certain things? I think there's sectors within our supply chain, including last mile delivery, where there's a
yeah.
lot of savings that people actually don't know about. So
Because
the
they haven't
other
had the time to look into either. When you have employees who now have gone through 3 years of like the hardest supply chain ever, who are tired, who are burnt out, you're not getting them new staffing and support. They haven't had time to look at their invoices. They've been too busy reacting and keeping things moving. Now you've got an inventory pile up. Now's your chance as you look at 2023 where you're like, you know what? China's still doing COVID zero policy. How can I work around that? This country now has extra port services, extra
Mhm.
manufacturing. How can I utilize that? Let's look at our invoices. What did we pay on demurrage? What did we pay on storage?
And how can we
Renegotiate
avoid
those.
it?
Go back on those. Go back. Like some of these companies are massive carriers that like they've been making bank. And you're like, did you really need to charge me $8,000 in demurrage? Maybe you only needed to charge me 7,500, 7,000. Like, and it's those little things that add up, and we don't
Add
think to
up.
do that. Like, and the automation piece helps you avoid some of that. So
Yes,
taking the time now to
absolutely.
do digital integration, I don't know, so many
Yeah.
other things.
Oh, and I love that you bring that up, because there's so many things that we need to think about, especially if we're going to go into 2023 with as many challenges. I mean, you can't do that with less
Oh,
people or people who are already burnt out. I think the other part of this article also says 50% says sustainability in supply chain is important.
it
Now,
is.
that actually leads me to our last article, which we don't have a lot of time to talk
Oh,
about, but I
boy.
do want to share it because there's so much amazing information in this particular article. So the IMO is
That's a
coming
good
out
one.
with new environmental regulations. You've heard me talk about this before. Marine transport, 3% of global greenhouse gases. But who's going to pay to make all of these changes? Jeremy Nixon says $1.5 trillion over the next 20 to 30 years is going to have to be spent to be able to make these changes. And I think that's about 600,000 a year. Now, when
Yeah,
I was emceeing, that management meeting in June, it was like, who's going to pay for this? Is the customer
yeah,
going to pay for it? IKEA was like, no.
yeah.
Is the freight forwarder going to pay
Oh,
for
boy.
it? So, who is going to pay for it? Are the ultimate consumers going to pay for it? And I think that's a really, really big question. So, one of the things that they talked about paying attention to as a supply chain manager, because they actually talk about what you need to look out for as far as this is concerned. One is where your goods are sourced, which takes us back to the original article. We're totally like bringing it back together, people. Um, Take a look at where your goods are sourced. Take a look at the routes that you are using to move your products from place to place, because they are going to be putting penalties, I believe, on really large vessels that are making short trips. So
Yeah,
something to think about. And then plan for higher costs in the EU, because the EU is actually going to be imposing some sort of costs in regards to transportation into and out of Europe as well. So definitely some things to think about when you are planning. Um, do you have any final thoughts on this particular article? I mean,
I
I
I
thought it's
do think it's something we have to pay attention to. It is coming. Our, like our customers are starting to ask because they're direct, the user of the product, at the retail level is certainly interested in what sustainability efforts you're making. And yes, we are starting to see these more targeted fees. But yeah,
absolutely. All
definitely a
right.
good article.
Well, we are gonna end right on time. I've got a couple other things to say before we go, because Far Eye is coming up at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, right after us, and you're not gonna want to miss that one. So we've got some upcoming events to tell you about. Obviously, the Logistics and Tech Summit is happening this week, so definitely go and check that out. Reuters event, Logistics Technology USA, is also happening in Austin, Texas this
Right
week
now.
as well. And then we've got a LinkedIn Live that I'm going to be hosting with Emerge, and that's happening December 6th at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm also going to give you a really good sneak peeks. So we are coming out with a top secret project December 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are going to go live on our LinkedIn with something very, very fun and special for all of you. So make sure that you mark that in your calendars. And of course, we've got Manifest from January 30th to February 1st in Vegas. And we've got all of our live shows as well. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us today. Audrey, it was so amazing to see you. And next week, who's joining me next week? Next week, I've got Ashley Yentz from Sleep Number, and that's going to be a lot of fun as well. Anyways, have a great week.